Hey, Scott Jordan, Mark Warner here for Jancast number 152 for Thursday, August 24th, 2023. And you know what that means, Mark?
It means that September is right around the block.
Yep, it's not long now. We'll be selling winter rinse and liquid ice melt. If you don't have it in stock yet, reach out to your sales representative.
It also means that flu season's coming back around. At the end of every summer, it becomes things to watch for. And, you know, realistically, the one that we worry about the most is COVID. Did you see the news on that, Scott?
It appears there's a whole bunch of weird variants coming down the pathogen highway, as they say. I just made that up.
I like it. So there's you can be added to the creative list of all the people making up names for COVID as we
we'll get into that. It appears there's one guy that's a specialist in coming up with weird names. So get into it, Mark. This is your area of expertise. What do we have to look forward to here?
Well, like the biggest piece of news as it relates to the seriousness is that we've got a couple new variants that are out there. And you know, one of those is two of them actually are pretty prevalent, but not necessarily highly contagious and lethal. And then there's one that's out there that's not very prevalent. I think it's only had 4 states impacted by it, but
four countries.
4 countries, but it's pretty lethal. So so I guess we need to keep our eyes on all this stuff. I think the idea of getting away from disinfecting altogether and thinking that we've gone back to the way things were in the 50s is not realistic. You know, I think the world has shifted on its own axis, and at least our society has shifted. And, you know, we now think about things like environmental hygiene, which isn't even a term that we used back in 2018 and 19. But environmental hygiene has to do with, whether or not we're minimizing the threat of an infectious disease outbreak by attending to the details with the environmental hotspots, meaning touch points and floors and counters and everything else. So that's changed. And like the amazing thing about COVID, everybody dove into this in the very beginning, and next thing we knew, it started mutating. It went from, the first strain, which I think is traditionally called the alpha strain. And then all of a sudden we were hearing about the beta strain, so all right. And this was all back in 2020. And then it went to gamma and delta. And then they just threw the card deck out the window and started making up names. So Omicron is actually one that came filtering in there. And, right now, the ones we're worried about, it's the EG.5, the FL.1.5.1, and the BA.2.86, which are really hard to remember unless you know the nicknames. And they're called the BA.2 is Parola, but we have a better nickname.
Groot. Because what is Parola? It's a tree, right?
It's a tree, an evergreen tree, and Groot was a star of a movie.
That's right. Those of you that know it well know that Groot is kind of a tree. Kind of is. Yeah, but a variant on a tree. Yeah,
a talking variant tree. And then we had like the BA.4s, the BA.5s. At one point, somebody nicknamed one of these Arcturus. We had the XBB strain, which ended up evolving into a 0.1.5 subvariant, which got nicknamed Kraken and named after sea monsters. This guy, Scott, named T. Ryan Gregory, that gets to make up all the names. Like the EG.5 now is now called Eris. Okay.
And not to be outdone, the FL 1.5.1 is called Fornax, which is the brother of from the New Gods comic by Jack Kirby. Those of you that follow Jack Kirby, the original drawer of the Silver Surfer, by the way, just for some info there. But it's getting in there. Good names, Fornax.
Yeah, I think the next one's going to be another sea monster, like maybe Godzilla. or the Meg.
The Meg. The Meg. Oh, that's a scary one, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
So
But
we have to worry a little bit about stuff, but the most important thing is we've learned a lot in all this time, right?
yeah, we have, part of what I get asked about a lot when I'm out doing training is, what's changed? What do we do differently, process
Yeah.
procedurally? And, the key things, there's some key core principles that have always been there. We've always talked about them, but they're a bigger deal now. The fact that if you're disinfecting with some kind of baby powder smelling bathroom disinfectant, it's probably not the appropriate tool.
Right.
You probably want to be working with a hospital grade disinfectant or even a tuberculocidal disinfectant with things like RSV. So when you start looking at the products that are in play, you have to make sure the products are efficacious for the threat, right? So things like coronavirus, we happen to know are relatively easy to kill.
Yep.
A traditional hospital grade disinfectant will go after these things. So we're able to kind of incorporate some of our existing chemistry, no matter what it's based on, whether it's quats or sodium hypochlorite or hydrogen peroxide or whatever. These are traditional active agents.
Yep.
All have their advantages, and they're efficacious for coronavirus.
So when
So
you're
that's
out
the
doing,
first thing.
yeah, when you're out doing your training, obviously you tell people about the fact that they have to disinfect their vegetables when they come home. They have to disinfect the bag the vegetables were in as well. And then before you even get
Actually,
into your house to disinfect, you have to walk through the curved thing that sprays you with
with bleach.
remember all this stuff from good old days at the beginning in 2020, the crazy stuff that was going on?
It was crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, the scariest, the stuff that they were talking about with disinfecting fruit and all that was beyond wacky. But beyond that level of wackiness was people having to walk through those bleach showers on the way to
Yeah.
work. Like,
Yeah.
can you imagine? I mean, I'm guessing their clothes were white.
Well, I don't think it was actually bleach. I think they were told it was something that it really wasn't. Otherwise, yeah, nobody's going to spray bleach on your body when your clothes on, and you certainly wouldn't do it without your clothes on, because that'd be even worse from a skin irritation standpoint. But
And there's some people I would just rather see clothed.
yeah,
So, but those when we are talking about like the how you talk to people when you're doing training, that's like
yeah,
number one. Make sure you've got something that's going to work. Otherwise, you're just doing exercises. And the second thing is make sure that you're focusing on the hot spots. It's a procedural change. So
yep,
do you have to do every square inch of the floors, walls, and ceilings? Technically, no. They're not all hot spots. The hot
right,
spots are things like touch points, which of course we're all really aware of that. But above the floor, horizontal surfaces are also hotspots, and the floor itself is a superhighway. Things track on the wheels of carts and soles of shoes, and use a foamite vent to actually transfer to somewhere where your hands will touch it.
yeah.
Even picking up a power cord, that cord's been dragging on the floor. So there is these interactions with those three hotspots. So that's a procedural change. And then the third element is you change your frequency. If it's really a threat, highly contagious threat, you better ramp up your frequencies. Where
So
back in the day, Scott, you remember you cleaning a bathroom or touch points once a day was completely appropriate
yeah,
and is no longer the standard.
yeah. How
It's
is it? How is
multiple
it when
hits.
you do a lot of training at universities and places, colleges and stuff like that? Um, Have they changed their allocation of staffing to be able to accommodate the proper use of products like we're talking about? I mean, because before COVID, like you said, they didn't worry about cleaning the bathroom until everybody was out of the building, right?
Yeah, they've had to go through staffing changes. In some cases, they had to really put a lot of thought into how to do that. Some cases, if they're capped on personnel count, then they have to start looking at other ways where they can free up man hours by using high productivity equipment like backpacks and
Hmm.
ride-ons and things like that rather than floor machines and wet vacs. So But they've had to adapt to it because in a lot of cases there's checklists where they're literally signing off
Yeah.
on a process being completed. So I mean, all that has really shifted the game so much compared to where things were in 2018, 2019, like
Yeah.
crazy.
Hmm. Well, the other big innovation back in the day was, wait, I just happen to have one right here. Everybody remember this? Those of
Yeah,
you that,
I think you got that off of a display next to the T-Rex at Smithsonian Institute, right?
hey, great marketing idea. Now, for those of you that don't know it, this particular company is out of business. And a whole bunch of people have a whole bunch of them. You know what it's really good for? For misting your plants at home. It's a pretty
Well,
expensive plant mister, but yeah. So, and there's other companies out there that are kind of using this to their advantage and doing swap me out. But we've talked about electrostatic sprayers many times on this show in the past, and I think it's
you
pretty
know,
clear where we stand on it, right?
yeah, I mean, the biggest issue that we really have had on this thing was the over embellishment of claims.
Yeah,
And people would over embellish the claim that it's electrically charged, and as a result of that, it's got a wrap feature that'll wrap around to the backside of door handles.
right.
It'll wrap around to the underside of chair arms,
Yeah,
and we know that's not what happens.
no,
People were leveraging the fact that electrostatic paint spraying was used in the automotive industry for years, but that's highly charged paint and it's grounded metal.
yeah, right.
And, there's like a completed circuit that happens. And, that's not what was happening environmentally. So we used to take great offense to people making claims that there was a wrap. Now, to two sides to every whatever
Yeah,
story. There are some positives about an electric static sprayer, but to me it doesn't have anything to do with the claim of it being electrostatic. It has to do with the fact that it's a motorized pump, and that motorized pump allows you to have a very uniform spray, which can be a challenge with a manual pump up,
right.
because as it starts to lose its pressure, it loses its
Yeah, yeah,
the amount that it's putting out. So
yep,
that's where it's valid, and it doesn't need to have all the electrostatic properties to be able to have a battery powered pump that charges it up. In fact, we
yeah.
have tons of those.
Well, and I think there was also some discussion about whether or not when this unit or other units, batteries specifically, compared to there's another unit out there that's much more expensive you plug in, but the battery one, we're not even sure whether or not it had the pseudo electrostatic qualities to it when the battery got below a certain amount. It might still be putting the chemical out, but it might not do what you want it to do. So we have alternatives. We sell our own sprayer system, and we have alternatives that allow you to put a rechargeable pump essentially that replaces the pump up unit with a lithium battery unit. That's a more economical way of doing it than spending $300-400 on one of these. That you're paying for a lot of stuff, that a lot of bells and whistles that doesn't actually do anything.
I think the most interesting thing that's happened with electrostatic sprayers is that the EPA acknowledged that they hadn't done any real formal testing on these
Yeah,
as devices. And a bunch of studies were put out there where multiple units were tested and they varied in such a radical way.
yeah,
I know that one of the studies showed that out of like 8 units tested, two of them were sending it out at a reverse charge.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so what is that environment different or something?
yeah.
So there was no real standard that was built around performance claims. And I guess the EPA is, they've kind of ramped up their own game to try to figure out how they might do some evaluations so this doesn't happen down the road.
Yeah, we got. I'm trying to remember when it was. Maybe a year ago, we got contacted by some of the raw material suppliers asking us whether or not they think it was worthwhile to put the time and effort into following the new EPA protocol that would validate the electrostatic sprayer units. And we kind of said, well, we don't really believe in them at that point. And I haven't heard anything about that They kind of jump from that to the residual claim package, which is a lot more important than whether or not an electrostatic sprayer does anything different than a regular sprayer.
Well, the point is that it has never really been anything but a dispensing unit. The
Right.
same as a trigger bottle,
Yep.
same as a garden style pump up sprayer. It's just a dispensing unit. And all of it, the variances that you see in performance have to do with the variances in how people use them. You can't stand 20 feet away and kind of think that you're misting things in the air and doing anything. And there's a lot to be said about documenting the training that somebody has as they use a sprayer, whether it's a trigger sprayer or a pump up or battery pack charged pressurized unit or even electrostatic unit. It's got to be used in a uniform way at a uniform distance away from the surface so that it uniformly wets that surface long enough to meet the dwell time, but not over wet it so it dries down into a sticky, tacky residue and attract resoiling. So all of that is procedural. And, I think what we're going to see is some effort being made on how to document whether or not somebody has mastered that skill set.
Yeah. Well, and you also have to know enough that if you're using one product for a particular need that has a 10-minute dwell time, you have to apply a lot more product. So you might even be using a different tip on that sprayer to put down, so you don't have to do multiple applications. But then if you switch to another product that only has a 2-minute dwell time, then you could be using way more product than is necessary because you forgot the fact that your process was for 10-minute dwell time versus a 2-minute dwell time. So a lot of training stuff involved with getting the job done right.
Yep, and that's really the direction that I see a lot of training going is at some point, not just documenting somebody has the knowledge base, having sat in a classroom or been through instruction, but do they have mastery of the equipment and tools themselves?
Yep.
Do they know how to use them right? Because that can be the weak link. And I think that's where the direction of training is going to go down the road.
Yeah. Well, very interesting stuff. So everybody stay tuned. We'll keep giving you info, but keep doing what you've been doing and do it right.
Yep. And the good news is you don't have to disinfect your vegetables when you go to the grocery store.
Yes, unless you want to, and we have a product for you. Well, thanks a lot for tuning in, everybody. Appreciate it. Hope you saw our last show was with Diana Steinbach. Excellent show on the NAW. For those of you that don't know anything about NAW, it'd be a great way to catch up on that. And we have some interesting future shows coming up. So
Absolutely.
stay tuned. Okay, see y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Bye-bye.